he's threatening me! Oh!
Look what she did to my tractor! She just plowed right into it!
You know, there's a specific kind of silence you only find after a firefight. A ringing emptiness that settles in your ears when the noise finally stops. And I spent 22 years in the Marines chasing that quiet, thinking that if I just survived one more tour, one more patrol in the sandbox, I'd find it back home on the plot of land my grandfather carved out of the Kentucky dirt, with nothing but a mule and a stubborn streak. My name is Caleb Vance, retired Master Sergeant, and when I finally hung up my uniform and came back to rebuilding Vance Family Farm, I wasn't looking for a fight, I was looking for redemption, or at least a place where the only thing trying to kill me was the humidity. But life has a funny way of ambushing you right when you drop your guard, because I traded the insurgents and the IEDs for something that, in a weird twisted way, was almost more aggravating. A Homeowners Association president named Patricia Kingsley, who decided that my cornfield was an eyesore on her perfect suburban horizon. My dad's farm had sat mostly fallow since he passed. Just overgrown rows of weeds and a red barn that leaned a little to the left, like an old man needing a cane. And while I was overseas, a developer bought the land flush against my western fence line and threw up the gables at Riverwood, one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions where every house is the same shade of beige, and the grass is so green it looks like it was painted on. I didn't mind the neighbors, honestly. I waved when I saw them, kept to my side of the fence, and started the slow, back-breaking work of bringing the farm back to life, focusing on restoring my dad's vintage 1978 International Harvester tractor, a beast of a machine that roared like a dragon and smelled like diesel and hard work. I was 3 weeks into the restoration, covered in grease and sweat, just starting to feel like a human being again when Patricia showed up. I was drinking coffee on my porch, enjoying the sunrise, when I saw a woman marching up my gravel driveway, and I say marching because she didn't walk. She stomped with purpose, holding a clipboard like a weapon, wearing a pristine white tennis outfit that had clearly never seen a tennis court. She bypassed my no trespassing sign without a glance, walked right up to my porch steps, and before I could even say good morning, she was already listing my violations. "Mr. Vance," she said, peering over her designer sunglasses, "I'm Patricia Kingsley, president of the Gables HOA, and we need to discuss the industrial debris you're keeping in clear view of our residents." I looked round my yard, saw the tractor parts I had laid out on a tarp, cleaned and organized just like the Corps taught me, and I took a slow sip of coffee. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice level, the same tone I used to de-escalate rookies with live grenades. "This is a working farm, not a showroom, and more importantly, it's not part of your HOA. My deed predates your subdivision by about 60 years. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was a shark's smile, all teeth and calculation. "We have visual easement covenants," she said, tapping her clipboard with a manicured nail. "What you do here affects our property values, and frankly, that rusted monstrosity and the noise from your agricultural hobbies are disturbing the peace. So consider this a courtesy warning to clean it up, or we'll be forced to escalate." I should have laughed. I should have told her to get off my property and go worry about someone's trash cans being left out too long. But I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch out until she shifted uncomfortably in her expensive sneakers. "Patricia," I said softly, "you have no jurisdiction here, and I have a corn harvest to prep for. So unless you want to grab a wrench and help me tighten a manifold, I think we're done." She turned a shade of red that clashed with her tennis visor, spun on her heel, and stormed off, muttering something about uncooperative elements. And I thought that was the end of it, just a suburban tyrant flexing muscles she didn't have. But I underestimated her need for control. 2 days later, the letters started arriving. Not in the mail, but taped to my gate. Official-looking documents on thick cardstock citing obscure noise, ordinances and aesthetic violations, demanding I cease operations immediately pending an HOA review. I tossed them in the burn barrel with the dry leaves, figuring she was bluffing, but then the drone showed up. I was out in the field, testing the hydraulics on the tractor, when I heard that high-pitched whine, like a mosquito on steroids. and I looked up to see a quadcopter hovering 20 feet above my head, its camera lens staring right at me. I followed the line of sight back to the subdivision, and there she was, standing on her second-story balcony with a remote control, watching me like I was a bug under a microscope. That was the moment the switch flipped in my head, not to anger, but to that cold, tactical clarity I hadn't felt since Fallujah. She wasn't just a nuisance. She was an adversary conducting surveillance, and you don't ignore an adversary. You prepare for them. I didn't wave at the drone. I didn't throw rocks at it. I just walked back to the house, went into my office, and started pulling records, every plat map, every zoning ordinance, every county survey going back to 1950. I found out that the gables had been built on a conditional permit that required them to maintain a buffer zone of trees between the homes and the agricultural land trees they had cut down to improve their views. And more interestingly, the gravel service road running between our properties wasn't owned by the HOA at all. It was a county easement that I had legal right-of-way to use for farm equipment. While I was doing my homework, Patricia was escalating her war. She called the county health department claiming I was burying toxic waste, I was composting manure. She called animal control claiming my barn cats were rabid strays, they were vaccinated, and sleeping in the sun. And she even tried to get the sheriff to cite me for fugitive dust when I plowed the north field. The deputies, God bless them, knew me, Deputy Miller, and I went to the same VFW post and they'd come out, shake their heads, apologize for wasting my time, and leave. But I could tell they were getting tired of the calls. She's relentless, Cal, Miller told me one afternoon, leaning against his cruiser. She's got the whole neighborhood convinced you're running a chop shop or a meth lab over here. You gotta watch your six, man. People like her don't stop until they win or they crash. He was right about the crash. He just didn't know how literal it was going to get. It was harvest week, the most critical time of the year, and I had the International Harvester running sweet, the diesel engine thumping a steady rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. I was up at dawn, coffee in a thermos, rolling down that gravel service road to get to the lower cornfield, keeping my wheels strictly on the easement, moving slow and steady. I saw Patricia standing in her backyard, phone in hand, filming me, her face twisted in that familiar look of disdain. But I ignored her and kept my eyes forward. I did my first pass, the harvester chewing through the stalks, the air filling with that rich, dusty smell of dry corn. And everything was peaceful until I turned around for the second pass, back up the service road. I had pulled over to the shoulder to check a hydraulic line. The tractor completely stopped, engine idling, when I heard the roar of an engine, not a tractor, but a luxury sedan gunning it. I looked up just in time to see Patricia's silver Mercedes SUV tearing down the gravel road, kicking up a cloud of dust, heading straight for me. She wasn't slowing down. She was playing chicken, trying to scare me, trying to force me to swerve into the ditch. But I was parked, I was stationary, and I wasn't moving. At the last second, she realized I wasn't flinching. Or maybe she lost control in the gravel, I don't know, but she swerved, overcorrected. And wham! The sound of German engineering meeting American steel is sickening, a crunch of plastic and glass that echoed across the fields. She clipped the front loader bucket of my tractor with her passenger side fender, spinning her SUV into the drainage ditch where it came to rest at a pathetic angle. Steam hissing from the radiator. I sat there for a second, stunned, checking myself for injuries. I was fine. The tractor barely shook, and then I killed the engine and climbed down, my boots crunching on the gravel as I walked toward her car. She was already out, stumbling a bit, but not from injury, from rage. She looked at her smashed fender, looked at my tractor, and then she did something that told me exactly who I was dealing with. She reached down, grabbed a jagged rock from the ditch, and hurled it at my tractor's windshield, shattering the glass with a loud crack. Then she pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and started screaming, literally screaming, "Help! He hit me! The crazy farmer rammed me! I'm being attacked!" I stood there, arms crossed, leaning against my rear tire, just watching the performance. She was crying now, fake sobbing into the phone, telling the operator that I had chased her down, that I was threatening her, that she feared for her life. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, terrifying in how easily the lies spilled out of her mouth. When Deputy Miller pulled up 10 minutes later, sirens wailing, Patricia rushed him like a long-lost lover, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Arrest him," she shrieked. "He's a maniac. He drove that monster right into me. Look at my car. Look at what he did." Miller looked at me, looked at the tractor, looked at the skid marks in the gravel which clearly showed her swerving into me. But he had to follow procedure. He walked over, notebook out, looking tired. "Cal," he said, "you want to tell me your side?" "I don't need to tell you, Miller," I said, keeping my voice low so she couldn't hear. "I need you to look at the barn." He frowned, following my gaze to the eaves of my barn about 50 yards away. "What am I looking at?" "See that little black box under the gutter?" I asked. "That's a 4K wide-angle security camera with night vision and audio, motion activated, backed up to the cloud. I installed it the day after the drone showed up." Miller's eyebrows shot up. "You got this on video?" "Every second," I said. "The approach, the impact, the rock she threw, and the 911 call where she lied to dispatch. It's all there, timestamps and everything." Miller let out a long, slow whistle, snapping his notebook shut. "Well then," he said, a small smile touching his lips, "I think you better invite me inside to watch a movie." We left Patricia ranting by her car, demanding to know why I wasn't in cuffs yet, and went into my office. I pulled up the footage on my monitor, and it was crystal clear HD evidence of her accelerating, her loss of control, the collision with my stationary vehicle, and the vandalism. When Miller saw her throw the rock, he actually chuckled. "That's destruction of property and filing a false police report," he muttered. "She just cooked her own goose." He went back outside, and I watched from the window. Patricia was still vibrating with self-righteous fury, waiting for him to drag me out. Instead, Miller walked up to her. His demeanor completely shifted from neighborly cop to officer of the law. I couldn't hear what he said through the glass, but I saw the color drain from her face. I saw her mouth open and close like a fish on a dock. I saw her look up at the barn, at the camera she hadn't noticed, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She didn't get arrested that day Miller cited her, took her statement which she foolishly signed, and told her the DA would be in touch, but she drove away in her battered Mercedes, looking like she'd swallowed a lemon. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that the shame would make her back down. But I forgot that people like Patricia don't feel shame. They only feel threatened, and when they feel threatened, they sue. 3 days later, I was served with a lawsuit thicker than a phone book. She was suing me for emotional distress, vehicular assault claiming the video was doctored, and demanding the seizure of my farm equipment as a public safety hazard. She was also rallying the HOA, sending out newsletters claiming I was a violent, unhinged veteran who was a danger to the children of the neighborhood. I called my old buddy Sam, the best land use lawyer in the state, and we sat at my kitchen table reviewing the paperwork. Sam was laughing by page 10. "Cal," he said, wiping tears from his eyes, "she's accusing you of weaponizing agriculture. This is insane. But she's got a fancy firm representing her, probably paid for by the HOA dues. We need to hit back, and we need to hit back hard. I don't want to just win the lawsuit, Sam." I told him, pouring us both a bourbon. "I want to know how she has the money for this lawyer. I want to know why she thinks she owns a county road. I want to know everything." So we went digging, while Patricia was busy posting diatribes on Nextdoor and trying to get the neighbors to picket my driveway. Sam and I were at the county clerk's office, buried in boxes of records, and that's when we found the smoking gun, or rather, the smoking cannon. It turns out, when you pull the thread on a sweater whereupon out of lies, the whole thing unravels faster than you can blink. And what Sam and I found in the dusty basement of the county clerk's office wasn't just a discrepancy, it was a felony. We started by pulling the HOA's financial filings, which, by law, are public record for any incorporated association, and compared them to the bylaws Patricia herself had written. The bylaws stated that legal fees were capped at $5,000, without a majority vote from the homeowners, yet here she was, paying a high-end downtown firm a retainer of $25,000 to sue me. Where did that money come from? We dug deeper. We found invoices for landscaping consultation paid to a company called PK Designs. A quick business license search showed that PK Designs was registered to none other than Patricia Kingsley, operating out of her home address. She had been paying herself $3,000 a month for 5 years to consult on the grass cutting. We found payments for security audits that went to her brother-in-law's shell company. In total, she had funneled nearly $200,000 of the neighborhood's dues into her own pockets over her 6-year reign as president. Sam said, staring at the spreadsheet we'd built, his face pale. This isn't a civil dispute anymore. This is embezzlement. This is grand larceny. She's not just a Karen, she's a criminal. While we were building the case, Patricia was getting desperate. The court date for the tractor incident was looming, and she knew the video was going to bury her. So she tried to turn the court of public opinion. She called an emergency HOA meeting at the community center, explicitly to vote on a measure to build a safety wall between the subdivision and my pharma wall that would cut off my access to the service road and cost the homeowners a fortune. I wasn't invited, obviously, but as a bordering landowner whose easement rights were on the docket, I had a legal right to be there. So, the night of the meeting, I put on my best Sunday suit, polished my boots, and grabbed the thick binder of evidence Sam and I had compiled. The community center was packed. People were angry not at her, but at the situation. Scared by her lies about the violent farmer, Patricia stood on the stage, microphone in hand, looking like a preacher delivering a sermon on hellfire. We cannot let this man intimidate us, she shouted, her voice echoing off the cheap acoustic tiles. He attacks our cars, he spies on us with cameras, and now he threatens our very way of life. This wall is the only way to ensure the safety of our children. The crowd murmured in agreement, fear doing its job. I stood at the back of the room, listening, waiting. When she finally stopped for breath and opened the floor for questions, I raised my hand and walked down the center aisle. The room went dead silent. Patricia looked like she'd seen a ghost. You can't be here, she stammered into the mic. Security. Someone remove him. I have a legal standing to address any motion affecting my property easement, I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone drill instructor volume, but calm. And I think your neighbors deserve to know what they're actually paying for. This is a private meeting, she shrieked, her composure cracking. I turned to the audience, ignoring her. My name is Caleb Vance. I'm the guy with the tractor. I'm the guy Patricia told you was violent. But I'm also the guy who went to the county courthouse this morning. I held up the binder. Did you know that your HOA dues have gone up 15% every year for the last 5 years? A few heads nodded. People were listening now. Did you know? I continued, walking closer to the front row, that $25,000 of your money was spent last week to sue me for a car accident that Patricia caused, an accident where she drove into my parked tractor? Lies, Patricia screamed. He's lying to you. I have the video, I said, pulling a USB drive from my pocket and holding it up. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you folks have been paying $3,000 a month to PK Designs for landscaping consulting. Does anyone here know who owns PK Designs? Silence. I looked at a woman in the front row. Mum, do you know? She shook her head. Patricia owns it, I said, dropping the bomb. She's been paying herself your money to tell the landscapers to cut the grass and the security audits. Her brother-in-law. It's all here. Bank records, invoices, incorporation papers. I walked up to the stage and set the binder down on the table, in front of the horrified HOA treasurer, a meat guy named Bob who looked like he was about to faint. Bob, why don't you open that to page 4 and tell everyone what you see? Patricia lunged for the binder, actually tried to grab it, but Bob, bless his heart, pulled it away. He looked at the page, looked at Patricia, and his face went gray. Patty, he whispered into the hot mic. What is this? The room erupted. It wasn't a murmur anymore. It was a riot. People were standing up, shouting, demanding answers. Patricia stood there, the blood draining from her face, looking from neighbor to neighbor, realizing that her fortress of fear had just crumbled into dust. She tried to speak, tried to spin it, but the sound of 50 angry homeowners drowning her out was sweeter than any music I'd ever heard. The police were called, but not on me. Deputy Miller showed up. He must have been waiting in the parking lot. Tipped off by Sam, and this time, he wasn't there to take a report. He walked up to the stage, handcuffed Patricia right there in front of the garden club and the neighborhood watch, and read her rights. The charge list was long: embezzlement, fraud, filing a false police report, and insurance fraud for the car wreck. As they walked her out, she passed me in the aisle. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just looked at me with this hollow, confused expression, like she couldn't understand how a man in dirty work boots had dismantled her entire empire. "You ruined everything," she hissed. "No, Patricia," I said quietly. "You did." I just turned on the lights. The aftermath was swift. The lawsuit against me was dropped with prejudice the next day. The HOA board resigned en masse, and a new board was elected headed by Mrs. Higgins, the sweet lady who lived 3 doors down and baked cookies for the garbage men. They didn't build the wall. In fact, they voted to plant a community garden along the fence line. On their side, using the compost I donated from the farm, I finished my harvest that week. The tractor running smooth with a new windshield and a freshly painted bucket. The corn came in high in gold, a bumper crop, and the rhythmic thump of the engine felt different now. It felt like victory. A few weeks later, on a crisp Saturday morning, I was out by the fence repairing a post when I saw a kid, maybe 10 years old, standing on the other side, watching me. He was holding a toy tractor, a little green John Deere. "Hey there," I said, tipping my cap. "Hi." He said shyly, "My mom said you were in the Marines. She said you fought bad guys." I chuckled, wiping my hands on a rag. "A long time ago, son. She said you saved the neighborhood from the witch," he whispered, eyes wide. I laughed out loud then, a real, deep belly laugh that scared a crow off the telephone wire. "Well, I don't know about that. I just made sure the tractor kept running. Can I see it?" he asked, pointing to the barn. "Tell you what," I said, walking over to the gate. "You ask your mom if it's okay, and if she says yes, I'll let you sit in the driver's seat. It's got a lot of buttons." He took off running toward his house, yelling for his mom, and I leaned against the fence post, looking out over the fields. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the corn stubble and the manicured lawns of the gables. The two worlds were still different, one messy and wild, one neat and trimmed, but the tension was gone. The silence I had been chasing for 22 years finally settled over the land, not empty and ringing, but full of peace, full of justice, and full of the promise that no matter how loud the tyrant screams, the truth is always louder. I took a breath of the cool air, smelled the dirt and the diesel and the faint scent of barbecue from a neighbor's grill, and for the first time since I came home, I didn't feel like a soldier guarding a perimeter. I just felt like a farmer. And let me tell you, folks, if you've got a bully in your backyard, whether it's an HOA president or a boss or just someone pushing you round, remember this: don't just get mad. Get prepared, get the facts, and never, ever let them tell you where your property line ends. What about you? Have you ever had to stand your ground against a petty tyrant? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I read them all. Until next time, keep your fences mended and your powder dry.